Good morning, everybody. We have a very nice crowd. And I'm very excited because I think you're in for a treat. We have some really knowledgeable and excellent speakers. I'm going to put them on the spot because I think they'll do a great job representing both the tile industry as well as the design and architectural side of this industry. So I'm Bart Bettiga. I'm the Executive Director of the National Tile Contractors Association, and I'm kind of the moderator or MC or question asker to our group. I like these type of panel open dialogue conversations, and we're going to get through some slides and some work that some of our guys do, both from a architectural specification side as well as installation side. But we want you comfortable with asking us any questions as well. So we're going to try to, I'll keep my eye, and if somebody raises their hand, even while we're talking, we're very open to that and hope that there's some dialogue here. You know, the whole concept of what we really want to do here is talk about cutting edge technology, probably for the most part, focusing specifically on porcelain tile panels, slabs, products of that nature. And but how we take that, how we embrace that as contractors and installers, what goes into that decision making, and then how we also empower or work with architects and design professionals to create awareness of that, and then from the architecture side, you know, how they look to partners or look to the tile industry to get the information that they need in order to specify new cutting-edge products like that. So with that, just to say a couple things about the National Tile Contractors Association. We're an owner and partner in this show coverings, have been for since its inception. We have about 1,800 members around the country. We have 7 now full-time trainers that travel all around the country putting on training and education programs. So hope you come see us after the show at our booth here in Hall C. With that, I'm going to ask each of my panelists to just quickly tell you a little bit about themselves and who they are, and then we'll get into the content of our program. So start to my left with Sam Bruce.
My name's Sam Bruce. I'm from Visalia, California, president of Visalia Ceramic Tile, centrally located in California, so we could reach a lot of areas. Currently have about 160 employees, with over 120 of them as installers, and current president of the NTCA.
Chris?
I'm Chris Rachel. I'm out of Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm a partner at Lusso Porcelain and Design. We have a Gauge Porcelain showroom, as well as Superior Home Solutions, where we focus on gauge porcelain installations only.
And I'm Steve Clem. I'm an architect and interior designer with TVS. We're based here in Atlanta. This is one of our buildings from many years ago. I have a fantastic staff of architects and interior designers who are very curious and technically savvy. This has been an extraordinary material for us, innovative, and so is a high priority for some of our project work you'll see.
Adam?
My name is Adam Christiansen, founder and owner, managing partner of Lusso Porcelain Design, which we import and make gauge porcelain available in our Kansas City market. And that was one of our claim to fame there is we bring the porcelain directly to our installers and contractors, and also we manage the education side by both educating our installers and design community. So it's been pretty good that way.
Yeah, and Chris and Adam have been at the forefront, along with some of our trainers, with really embracing this category and helping to grow this category around the country. So, I'm going to ask Steve. Steve, just how did you, when you first find gauge porcelain? I mean, we know we still have an opportunity to really grow this market, but how did you become aware of it, and what did you see as its advantages compared to other products that you'd worked with before this was produced?
Well, we first got involved with it probably about 12 to 15 years ago. I mean, early in its distribution, we saw it as some opportunities, particularly in a renovation project, to overskin or overface, some existing projects. And so it was a learning education and an example that early on that we weren't comfortable with the edges of the tile, and we used corner details and the like, and we've since virtually eliminated that in some of our design solutions. But over time, it has really become, for us, one of the most innovative, progressive materials that we've found. And so we've now been able to implement that both vertically and horizontal, on numerous projects. Prep substrate is very important. So understanding the entire ramifications of the material has really been important. But once you kind of get through that, it's pretty endless what you can do.
Yeah. And did you go to Europe, Steve, to see the process of continuum or laminum?
Well, my foundation started with natural stone. And so I've been working at TVS as an architect for 46 years, so longer than most people ever. But with that time, I have thoroughly enjoyed the technical side and the aesthetic side of the composition of these materials. So I had great understanding going to the quarries, understand natural stone, veining patterns, and the amount of work that we would have to do in stone to coordinate the artful aspects about it were always pretty significant. And then as we got into some of the more progressive materials of thin gauge tile, it allowed us to get bigger coverage, less joints, easier to manage pattern, through the solutions, and a more expedient and by the way, color permanent, solutions.
Yeah.
So it's and we've been able to do it both domestically. There's a couple of really big projects we've done here in Atlanta, but we've been also doing it in India for numerous years and have a large quantity of material that's actually Italian equivalent manufactured in India, and it's really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be able to produce that, though, without the improvements in digital inkjet.
Well, in fact, we've been able, with some manufacturers, to custom develop the aesthetic patterning in the material, and not only the kind of distribution of faces, but also color and fine editing, in that through that digital process.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. And so now, as manufacturers, for the last, I think the gauge porcelain tile panels and slabs technology has been out for a little over 10 years. Took us a few years to develop product standards here in the U.S. Then we developed an installation standard. What's fascinating about that technology is once they figured out that they could produce it in thin formats, they're now able to produce it in thicker formats. So we're seeing the advancements of 2 centimeter and 3 centimeter materials, which we're being able to take out to the exterior aspects of home living as far as commercial roof decks, commercially. So the whole tile industry has created a lot of different market opportunities. So just like gauge porcelain tile panels and slabs, the tile industry now is taking a look at 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter, and starting to work on product standards, and then we'll lead into installation standards. But just technology is changing so fast. So I'm going to go to Adam and Chris and Sam real quick before I switch on the slides. When this came out, Steve saw it as a tile contractor. What made you, Adam, get just passionate about this and jump in? Because this is an expensive. It's not a simple decision to jump in to learn this.
No, it's not. I was asked by a manufacturer rep to attend one of their factory trainings down in Texas, and I saw it was decked in the material that we were working with, and that day when I saw the material and handled it and cut it, I knew right then and there that was the new surfacing I wanted to mess with as an installer, because if I could take 50 square foot and put it up in an hour rather than 50 square foot of subway car, 12 by 24s, I'm gonna stand out in the market because I can do something no one else can, but also at that point I'm putting up more square footage per piece. So I value my time over money that way. So being able to manage my time a little bit better by installing more quantity by single pieces really appealed to me. But learning the technical aspects and all the prep that goes behind that as well was detrimental to the success, because I did have failures at first, and it was mainly logistics, getting the material from A to B.
Chris, anything to add to that as far as what made you, because you've really embraced this from a technical standpoint?
Yes, I grew up early on, I'm a fourth generation tile installer, so I grew up through the 4 1/4 and then 12 by 12s and then 12 by 24s, and as soon as I laid my eyes on the 48 by 110s and 63 by 126s, I just kind of seen that, there's not too many other directions we can go from there. So that's what made me wanted to take a deep dive into those installations, knowing that that is our future here in the tile industry.
Sam, you got 140 some workers. So when you get something like this, what's your process? What's your approach when you see this technology as an opportunity for your company in California?
The first thing is right away you're thinking, okay, how are we going to get everybody trained? But we want to be a leader in the market, in our market at least. So anytime there's something new, we're trying to get it figured out. We're getting everybody trained. We want to train everybody that we're working with, whether it be architects, designers, so they know who to call when, they have a product like this. We're not doing installations, with this type of material every day, but, the goal for us is when there is a new product, we go out and do everything that we have to do to become the experts and become the people in the market that, we're going to get the call.
And are you looking at 2 centimeter now, and how will you approach that? Or are you already training and playing with that?
We're starting to, yes. I mean, we're in an area where everything comes to us like maybe a year or 2 years after it hits like LA and San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So even though, we always get ahead of the game, but we don't see those, kind of results right away, so.
I touched on the ANSI standards and the TCNA handbook, but I've got to put a plug in for hiring qualified labor. I think it's important we touch on that. I'm going to start with Steve. I mean, when you design gauge porcelain tile panels and slabs around the world, how important do you look at the labor aspect, and how do you approach that as an architect? What's your role with that?
Well, we start by writing the specification, and we also identify all the associated materials that are going to be part of that assembly. And so it's a pretty well-developed spec, led by the industry's guidelines. But where we're still running into, even here in the U.S., is people that, depending on, you got to go to the general contractors because they're the ones that are selecting the subcontractors. And if they have a relationship with a group that's inexperienced in the material you have or are still using old install standards, you've got a problem. And so we've had to put pressure on the qualified labor side of this on these projects. And then you still get a few that come in that if you're not monitoring the work in the field, you're going to discover like spot setting versus full coverage and those type of issues. When we were doing our project over in India, some of the most beautiful stone work that you've ever seen installed by these guys, and they are absolute masters for generations. And I mean, we're talking about hundreds of generations. And yet you introduce a new tile material, and they're using their old techniques.
Yep.
So as soon as we started this, probably over a 250,000 square foot job over in India, as soon as I saw a piece that was sawn versus scored and broken, we stopped the world and made sure that they brought sent a lot of videos, sent manufacturers. Raymonde came in, they brought in all this new equipment. We forced every subcontractor to go through a training program before they started the job. Mm-hmm. And the job is fantastic, but it was going to be a disaster. Mm-hmm. So there's, our job is not just decorative specifications. We're kind of design builders in the sense that we're responsible for the final product. So we have to be technically diligent, through the process.
Adam, if we hadn't jumped in, right? I mean, this was not a product that you could say I've been doing it this way for 30 years, because this was really unique and new. So when you and Chris do a lot of your training, are we pre-qualified? How highly skilled is this, and how long does it take someone to really kind of go through training and get the basics and then help pass that on to the crews that they work with? What's your opinion on where we're at, and are we keeping pace with the opportunity that we have here?
I think installers are becoming more push towards the training because the market is finally taking the product on, and they want to see it more in both residential and commercial sector. So the installers are finding that they have to get with the times. The guys that are going out there that are getting into it and saying, oh, I'm just going to do it my way, those guys get out of it really quick because they have a high failure rate, and then they realize they can't afford to pay for that job. So those guys that want to actually learn and get technically, trained, that training takes about 3 to 4 days to go through a good training course. You have your courses where they're informational, then day courses where you get your hands on it, and that gives the decision maker in the business the idea, okay, I need to actually take my installers and send them to a long course. And both the manufacturers have gotten behind it, the powder manufacturers for mortars and adhesives, they've gotten behind it. NTCA is doing it. As a group, we're pushing the qualified installer farther with their skills when it comes to this product, because everybody has an idea when it comes to this product. They either want it to look like natural stone slabs, and that goes to a whole different industry, or it looks like tile. Mm-hmm. So it's a real big mixture of both.
I might add that we are very big on, for substantial jobs, of requiring technical mock-ups. In other words, it may not be part of the work. It is a demonstration of technique and the detailing and the corners and the joints and the like, so that we can kind of have recognize the skill set and the quality expectations, and then make that a go-to representative standard for the contractor to refer to, or his labor side, through the course of the project.
Yeah, I think mock-ups are a great idea, that's for sure. How about pricing it, Sam? I mean, when you get new technology, I heard Adam mention, hey, I can put one piece in, faster. But I've heard an architect, when we first introduced this, that right away said, oh my God, this size is so big, it would be so much less expensive to install. But there was a learning curve up from our installer side too. So how do you approach pricing and estimating this material?
Well, it's not cheaper, that's for sure. So it is definitely more expensive.
There's risk. You break a piece, you have to factor that in.
Yeah, and a lot of times you got to factor for more waste. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. I've had some things we were discussing before coming up here is I've had this product changed more often than we've landed a job, just because it does cost more money. It takes it does take more time, more manpower, at least from our experience. So there is a kind of a give and take. We gotta educate what they're getting and the value of what they're getting to really sell a job like this.
Chris, when you train, do you talk about pricing and give some advice on how to approach that in their market, so that they don't just learn a skill and have it value engineered out, like Sam's talking about?
Most definitely. I mean, that's a big part of it too, is understanding the pricing, because a lot, as tile installers, we look at something and we understand how long that will take us and the amount of risk that we have involved with that tile installation. And I think one of the big misconceptions is some guys, they try and compare those two industries on the same pricing scale. And that's not something you can do with gauge porcelain. You have to
excellent point. It probably should be compared more to cladded stone or things of that nature. Yeah.
On our side, it's particularly on larger projects, it's relevant. It's actually easy to sell this material, even as a premium expense against other tile. But you compare it to woodwork, compare it to architectural woodwork, where you may be getting $65 a square foot or bigger if it's a monumental job, or metal panel work, or a variety of other exterior solutions. So it becomes very competitive. In fact, actually helps make the deal because of its price, value.
Steve, we as contractors generally work with the general contractor or builder. We don't always interface and work directly with you as the design professional architect. How do you rely on your tile suppliers for this information? Are you going to the distributors, so we can learn better? How can we, as an industry, educate the architectural and design community better on this category?
Well, over time, we've nurtured a lot of, relationships are everything. We have good relationships with subcontractors. So in fact, we encourage the best to go, we introduce them to general contractors, so we start there. From the manufacturers, we find the key distributors. We work with distributors and their A&D reps, you know, and so make sure we're actually communicating in the full circle. We're not just relying on a rep to do it. You know, we're going to the technical sources, the design sources, and and have a broader attention to us, with the sale of the products that they have. That's cool.
So talk to us about a couple of these jobs, Steve. I think you just won an award here, I think, or at Coverings, I think.
Well,
so,
yeah, actually, this is one that we just, today, we're supposed to receive a CID award. This is a project that's here in Atlanta. It's up on 1200 Peachtree across from Colony Square and the Arts Center. And it is a very large reposition job. This used to be a headquarters project in 1981. I was the architect, the junior architect, a baby architect at the time, working on this building. It was AT&T, and then it became Norfolk Southern, and then our client converted it to bought it and converted it to multi-tenant. And so we transformed the look and expression of this project largely through the lobby and both inside and outside. And what you're seeing is a 45-foot tall wall where we've used the porcelain tile, thin gauge material. This one, uniquely, we articulated it with a lot of different joint assemblies. You'll see a 3 by 10 inch aluminum tube that became an architectural detail, and that we set up panels in between them. We also had reveals that articulated the panels. We ran 2 panels tall, and because we were taking it outside, you'll see in a slide in a minute, we actually put ledger angles in there to relieve the stress so we didn't shear it off on an exterior. This is where we've done it for elevator cabs, and one of the things that I wanted to also talk about, you can see on the left side, is we pay a lot of attention, like natural stone, to art composition of panel to panel, and how we can get visuals to flow.
you go into that detail?
We actually, in our documents, we establish the digital image of each face, and then we organize it in a layout on our drawings, so it's not subjective when they get to the field.
So how is that communicated to the tile contractor?
Well, we identify each tile. We give them what the digital image is. It's on our drawings. It's actually organized. The vein pattern's illustrated. And so it's read the drawings, and you'll know what to do.
Is that where mock-ups come into play as well?
Mock-ups, in large part, are coming into some of the detailing. It's like I mentioned to you about corner edges. We've gotten to a place now where we are polishing, and you'll see that in another slide in a minute, where we're polishing all those edges. The density of the porcelain is so substantial that you can reach the same gloss level as the primary face, and so you can get all the burrs off of it. It looks like a finished cork-mitered architectural stone. So here's this large space. This is the award project. A third of this is on the outside of the building, and even on that one, we've actually subdivided the panel modulations to meet the code requirements for limit of size, but put all the patterns back together. This all looks like Corten steel, and it's fantastic material solutions. That glass lobby in here, that stuff is 42 years old, and it looks like a brand new space.
So we can go, this is here, we can go see this.
Yeah, this is over on 1200 Peachtree.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
really
and welcome you to do that. And then all the floors and everything else throughout that were all fresh, and there was large format there and a lot of other decorative solutions. We probably had 25 different tile manufacturers in this project.
So when the bid goes out on this, Steve, how does the general contractor, how many companies are bidding this type of work? There's not that many that can do this kind of work. Or how competitive is that bid process? What's your role in selecting who does get awarded that bid?
It's interesting. We had, I think we had 4 different companies initially, and it got narrowed down to 3, and went through some competitive bidding, but it was very qualified, on capabilities and price, on this. And we also had situations where we had to remove all the thick-set granite, mud bed, terrazzo, a variety of other things to get back and reestablish the substrate to put down this material. And all of this is over, the interior is over precast concrete.
Precast concrete.
Which a light gauge metal frame, cementitious backer board, and all. The exterior was directly over, similar assembly, but all over cast in place concrete.
Substrate preparation is crucial to this type product.
Yeah, imperative. This is our project, just one photograph of the work over in India. That wall that you see there is 55 feet tall. And so you can see on the book match pattern on the left, that's all porcelain. All the floor is porcelain. And we did something very innovative in this the stone wall with all the illumination. If you go to the next slide, I believe that you'll see the detail of that. We mixed two different finishes of the same tile. We had a gloss and we had a matte, a rustic matte as they referred to. And then we were able to tuck the lighting in. We didn't want the light to reflect into the material, so we used the dullest, flattest finish we could on the secondary surface that would be illuminated. And then here's an example of having a mock-up where we required them to assemble the pieces and polish the edges and meet approval before they could advance into the work.
Fantastic. And I was interested when you said the labor pool in India was it's pretty high quality. We have this inflated ego here that we're the best of the best, right? But you were pretty impressed with the quality of the workers.
Italians know how to do stone. Indians know how to do. I mean, you've got to recognize that culturally, here's a country that's been doing this thing for thousands of years. Right. They have. You can go to, archaeological ruins and see stone flooring materials that are just still fantastic. So.
And you spend a lot of time in India then to make sure that this is following.
I've been on this job for 17 years.
Wow.
So it's been a long, and it's 7.5 million square foot project, so it's had a lot of work.
Okay, installation. One of the things I was thinking of there, Adam, when Steve was showing that work is, man, we don't have to just train. We're not just training guys how to cut this material. We got to practice. We got to train them on safety, logistics. Talk a little bit about the challenges of installing these products, and where we're putting them.
The first problem that I encountered was logistics on my first job. It was a 17-panel job, residential, and nobody in any of the training classes I ever attended said, "Hey, Adam, you shouldn't carry this on a loose A-frame on an open-air trailer." I broke all 17 panels, and it was from the wind.
Can you believe that? Yeah, and you still and you kept doing it. Man.
Yeah. Well, I had no choice. I had already invested in the tools, and luckily the manufacturer worked with me and helped me replace a lot of the material at no cost. Which it was that baby step. If I didn't have that, it could have ruined me as a small tile contractor. But once I learned the logistics nightmares of getting it from A to B, the work became a lot easier. It really did.
Chris, you're kind of a tool guy. I mean, but this can't be an easy decision, what to make. Give me an example of, a two-man shop. What's that investment going to be? Say they go through the training and they because sometimes they go through the training and determine, I'm not going to do this. And that's not always a bad decision. I want to be clear about that. But
most definitely.
So what do you tell these guys, and what is that cost?
Yeah, so that initial cost to get into it and be able to go in and do that successful installation, you're going to be between that $10,000 to $15,000 mark, depending on what your first job is. If it's residential or commercial, or if you're working on a project with a whole bunch of miters, you may want to invest in some more pricier saws or equipment to help aid in those miters. But looking at tooling as tile guys, we all have that one favorite manufacturer that we typically deal with, that one tile cutter. And with Gage Porcelain, that's just not the case. Nobody has the answer for all the tools across the board. So now you're having to spend a little bit of time and go out and research different tooling from different manufacturers to help suit your business model or what types of jobs you're getting. So it definitely takes quite a bit of research just on the tooling side.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, with 100 and some people, how do you when you got new apprentices, how do you determine the teams? Do you assign somebody new to learn with a highly skilled or certified installer? What's your process of managing your schedule with that many people?
Well, first of all, we try to keep everybody versatile. We want everybody trained, so it's, we can easily send them out to any job site. We took 4 days to train our whole staff. Brought in actually some local designers and architects so they can see it as well. But there's a lot that goes into it. We went through, I don't know how many different manufacturers of tooling to find that worked best for us. But when we we get new guys, we have an apprenticeship program that this is part of our training, for the new guys. So there's different parts of our building that we are putting these panels up as part of the training. And it's important to not only know how to install this product, but how to handle it, how to move it from point A to point B. Outside the tooling, next thing you're doing is buying trailers or whatever it might be, to make sure that you get the product to where it needs to go safely. So.
And we have installation standards now. We have product standards, but in the beginning, I'll look to you, Adam or Chris. To be entrepreneurs, sometimes we have to take risk, right? So you can't have an installation standard or a product standard until you have some experience in the field, right? So somebody, Steve Clem, has to specify product without a standard, and somebody, Adam, Chris, Sam, has to install it without a standard, and in order for us to develop those standards. What leads you? You have to probably rely on the manufacturer and then find a partner in installation materials. What's the process there?
Yeah, so as a manufacturer of installation materials that kind of egged me on learning this, because their prep relies on everything. Like, you're going to have success with proper prep. So learning that was the biggest thing for the installation standard, and then knowing that you have to have flat floors and that. But then you look back at it, all tiles 12 by 24s, you literally need the same standard for those as you do gauge porcelain. Mm-hmm. So as tile contractors, we're not far off from already knowing that prep. Mm-hmm. It's just at that point selling the prep, and this product, you have to be more reliant on your prep really than anything else, in my opinion. And then the mortar manufacturers, the partners with them is what I rely on probably most, because not every, still with the manufacturers of gauge porcelain, they're putting different mesh backings on and just different types of processes that all mortar manufacturers still have to kind of test those materials against their stuff. So I really look for that manufacturer that is due diligent and wanting to do that testing constantly.
Yeah, Chris, how highly skilled does someone have to be to take this on? I mean, is this somebody that has to have been setting tile for a while? Do you pre-qualify when you're starting to work with people to help train them?
Yes. I'll say yes and no.
It might depend, right? If you're in a shower and you got a waterproof, it's a little different than if you're doing a countertop, right?
So for the prep side, we can take a tile installer or even potentially a really good stone fabricator, mm-hmm. and knock them through that 3-4 day course, and they're good to go in most cases. But there's actually, Steve, an architect that we trained last year. He quit his job as an architect and is now installing gauge porcelain full time. So it was unique because
there's money to be made in installation, right?
There is, most definitely. So it's one of those things.
Well, they are lighter weight. That's
they are
another factor, the ability to lift these big panels.
Yeah.
It's a big factor.
So it's, as far as a skill set, I think it's different from one person to another.
But it's definitely, if somebody's really afraid, I mean, there's people that are doing very well in this category now, and we will not grow this category past the percentage that we're at if we don't keep training and bringing people into it, that's for sure. So Chris, this is some of your work. Maybe let's talk about the type of work that you do, and it's beautiful, by the way. What are the challenges with doing something that looks like this?
Some of the challenges, because we do a lot of residential work, is getting that panel into the room we're installing in. In this case, we had 4 staircases to maneuver the panels up through. And this material, it wasn't vein matched from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer would not produce it that way. So the client actually paid for 4 times the amount of material just so we could do that shower, and it actually wraps around and ties into a bathtub that we made out of gauge porcelain as well.
What's the planning for you? I mean, you know where you're putting each piece. You talk about how you plan this
So
to make it
for-
look like this.
For planning for this, this bathroom, we actually ordered in 70 gauge porcelain panels.
Wow.
32 by 63s for this installation.
70 pieces?
70 pieces. So we actually laid them out, took pictures.
I didn't know there was that much money in Omaha.
Yeah, yeah. So we laid it out, took pictures, and then put it in the computer. Got the ones that were as close to the next continuing pattern as we could, and we actually ended up cutting a lot of those down to 31 by 59, I believe, just to get the veins to match. So
What about the seat, the edge? You know, is there polishing? I mean, how have you come to approach this, and how much have you learned in the process? Because this is incredible work.
we've learned quite a bit, and in this picture, it's actually one of my earlier showers I did with gauge porcelain, and the miters drive me a little bit crazy because that color isn't as matching as I would like to
As
see
you
it
would
today.
like,
But
yeah.
you know, that's been our biggest challenge is a lot of designers, they see gauge porcelain installed by fabricators, and fabricators, they will actually polish the material itself back, and that's proper for stone. But for gauge porcelain, we actually want to do a cork miter and fill that void with epoxy and polish the epoxy back, so we're actually giving that porcelain some edge protection there.
That's great.
So,
What's this one?
so that's a 20-foot fireplace, and that was, fortunately, the client chose a 7-way continuing gauge porcelain vein match, and it returns 8 inches back on the sides of the fireplaces as well. So that one, for us at this point, I will say it wasn't that challenging just because we've been through so many of them. But I will say, you know, for some of our first fireplaces, we dealt with that height, right? That's something, as tile installers, we don't deal with a whole lot. But getting that material up to that point, that's the most challenging part.
So
of
are
the
you using
fireplace.
scaffolding, or how are you dealing with that?
Yeah,
height?
so most cases, we set up scaffolding and staircase it up to that point, so we can just walk that material up a big staircase, essentially.
How many pieces are there?
4 pieces.
So trawling that, you know, you got to use product that's got a lot of open life. Or how do you go into selecting your installation material partner?
You know, it really depends on the installation. For fireplaces, we use 1 of 2 products most of the time. Something with an open time of 30 minutes is pretty nice.
So you got to have 30 minutes of open time. Yeah.
That's a good open time for us. You know, we'll have 3 guys on site, so we'll have 1 guy mixing. He'll mix, in this case, a bucket of mortar for each panel. So he's continuously mixing. Myself, another guy, we're continuously spreading and then installing the porcelain. So.
And here's just, again, some of the detail type work. I mean, is this what is part of that 4-day training, you guys?
Yes.
Getting into some of this.
Yeah, we definitely go over miters. That's probably one of the biggest questions we get is on miters.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many of them out in the market where fabricators are polishing the material itself back, and it leaves that racing stripe, so it's not aesthetically pleasing as color matching with an epoxy on a cork miter.
On certain jobs, where do profiles come in? I mean, when do you decide if you're trying to miter or polish an edge versus using a profile? How do you approach that?
I'll say it comes into, you know, if it's a commercial job, sometimes they don't want to pay for those miters, or it's an area where there's high impact, where they may have some carts rolling through,
Right.
something like that. So that's when edging kind of gets discussed.
Steve, I'm just, even though this is Chris's job, it just triggered me. You know, a lot of this is for flow, right? I mean, you want this material to continuously flow. It's so natural, and you book match. How do you handle expansion and movement control and in your design and make sure that you don't lose the flow of a project like this with following
we still-
EJ 171?
Depending on the area that that we cover, we still build in control joints, for movement. And with plan it and designate where those are and establish. And even if material, to your point, you have to cut it in smaller pieces and bring them back together, so that you have the visual flow. The other thing this reminds me of, even though we're using cork with polished edges for a lot of vertical work, when we do a reception desk, it's fundamentally the same thing. It's a cubic, shaped design that want three-dimensional flow and mitered corners.
Very cool. Adam, let's talk about some of yours.
This was a project that we did, and it was actually the designer we did another project for. She loved the material so much, she's like, I need that in my house. And it was a 12 millimeter dull tile product, and we, in the next slide, you'll see that we digitally laid it out. We maximized the material. So what we did is we took rough opening measurements of the firebox, and then went in CAD, and then with Alpha Cam and that, we were able to take a picture of the slab, digitally lay it out for all the pieces. We actually didn't template or anything. It was all built off a computer file and then laid out and then cut on a water jet. Everything was built in the shop, and it was a one-day installation to where we attached everything to the wall structure, and then the top mantel pieces and surrounding pillars being built out of 12 mil. We epoxied those together, then adhesed them to the structure itself.
So you found a partner or outsourced to a water jet company?
Yeah,
and
correct.
You laid it all out, told them how to, and then sent it back, and then you installed it this way?
Correct, and that way we were able to give the designer the expectation of the job. She was able to see what it was going to look like before it was even finished.
It's amazing.
Yeah, book matching is a big thing, right? I mean, can you talk a little bit about book matching for the crews out there?
So book matching and vein flow is two different things. So some manufacturers will have panels where, like Chris was talking about, where he had that fireplace where it was 7 panels continued. That's great when that happens, but sometimes a customer will pick out a material that doesn't have vein flow. So that's when you have to start thinking about how many slabs you need to give the end expectation to that customer. So you may only be installing 7 slabs, but you may need 10. So have that in the back of your mind when you're planning for that main flow. Now, when it comes to book match, most of your book matches from your manufacturers, you'll have your A, B. And your A and B you can usually end match to them, which will give you a star pattern, or you sometimes can take Bs and lay them next to each other to get a flow pattern to where it's not a V necessarily, or different types of shapes that come together with the book match, to where that expectation can be set out. So we can either do it digitally, or I've even done it as redundant, taking pictures with my iPhone and printing off the pictures and just kind of pushing together for the client to kind of see where we're going with it.
Sam, let's talk a little bit about what you've got here.
Well, the picture before, if you go back.
It's your
there.
office,
Yeah,
right? I've been there at his place. So,
So we were one of the first buildings out in this new area of the industrial park in our area, and once you start seeing all these other buildings going up, and we're like, man, why aren't we doing work on these places, on the facades or whatever? So we actually went and put these the panels up on our building, just to not only for get us kind of used to going high or using this product, but to also show, this is what we can do.
And you're bringing your clients there, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. This is a casino that is not too far from us. Restaurant, but you got a ceiling that's that has the panel on it, and the 3-wall kind of backdrop.
So how do you bring designers in for talks? Do you do some local presentations with your staff? How do you educate design professionals on products like this?
We did it early on, with people in our area, but a lot of when it comes to commercial projects like something like this, this is just a specification. So, somebody already knows about it, and fortunately, they kept this spec instead of using a different product. But this is anytime that we can educate and show the value here, that's what we are trying to do.
just to put a plug in for certification, we're definitely working towards certification of this category as well. But the importance of training and certifying your workforce. How many people have you certified? And talk about that.
Like a certified tile installers.
Yeah.
It's super important. It's very empowering for the installers. It gives a lot of credibility to our company, but we're somewhere in like the 40 to 45 range of CTIs, and I see a bigger benefit of what the installer takes with them, and they grow from that. They become better tile installers,
Right.
and they're really it becomes more of more than a job to them. They're professionals, and they love their craft. That's very empowering.
Specifying labor qualification. We kind of talked about this. Are there any questions from the audience, by the way? Because I have been enjoying my conversation and haven't looked up. But any questions from anybody? Yes, ma'am. You used what?
Butted.
Yeah, we don't want to have butt joints. The ANSI standard calls out for an 1/8-inch grout joint. Some of the manufacturers out there will supersede that, and that's when you really have to rely on that relationship with your manufacturer. But majority of our grout joints are an 1/8 inch.
Yeah, so you've got to manage the expectation of your client, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Correct.
And what kind of, you're just finding a blending grout. What kind of grout are you using generally with this? Is unsanded grout, sanded grout?
Some of our project we'll use an epoxy grout in a lot of our showers, a lot of our wall features. We'll do silicone in all the joints because we're going to treat every joint as a movement joint.
We do the same.
You do the same?
Yeah.
That's actually important. Yes, sir.
For the one fireplace I had up here, there were no returns. It was just a flush mount.
That was mine.
That was Adam's.
That's fine. Adam, go ahead. Yeah.
So most porcelain manufacturers don't want you to miter return that into the firebox. We did that as the designer specified she wanted miter return. I said I'll take it in 3.5 inches because the wall facade was actually built out 3.5 inches. So I felt comfortable at least doing that. That was 4.5 years ago, and I stay in pretty good communication with her. She hasn't had any problems. But again, that material thickness was also 12 millimeter, so it responds a little bit different to heat than the 6 millimeter product does.
Steve, do you address heat on any of this? Because that's a good question.
No, I mean, first off, we're not doing fireplaces that often, but we do exteriors where you got high heat exposure. I think it's sensible to avoid, super dark finishes in places that get very hot on occasion, just because of the obvious thing. But, the material is so phenomenal as far as its kind of range of capacity on, temperature exposure,
Exactly.
weatherproofing,
Freeze
water,
thaw,
freeze thaw, waterproof, non-permeable, it's unique.
Yes.
Now, are you speaking on expansion joints, like if you're doing multiple panels? So, like when we do walls, if we're doing a 3-wide wall and 3 panels up, every other joint will be silicone, but at that point, we're just going to silicone every one of them because it's just easier, faster, a little bit cheaper.
And that's just helping you allowing for movement.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, if you're out exterior, your movement joints are 8 to 12 feet or are exposed to sunlight. So you've got, some of these pieces are bigger than that, right?
Correct.
So you've got to factor
Well,
that
I
in.
wanted to add, and I don't know everyone else's attitude on this thing, but on our exteriors, we've had to be very diligent about conforming to the dimensional limits by code. And I've actually had some building departments restrict the amount of size of material that you can use, particularly if you're, say, down in South Florida where you get 175 170-mile-an-hour wind limitations, on your work. And so we've had to, cut our panels down to maximum limits and then put them back together to match patterns. But also, like this large job that we just got the award on the exterior, we used the Raymundi ray clips, ray fix pieces as a belt and suspender approach on this. Because the last thing we want to do is have the panel's not going to fail, it's going to be the substrate or other shear, conditions from freeze thaw, so that we try to avoid that.
Any other? Yes, ma'am.
The trainings that you're sending your guys to, are those manufacturer specific, or is there recommendations like in our area, there's not a lot happening within this, and like as a contractor, I want to find people, I want to resource people, like our tile installers to like equip them to bring this in.
Yeah, I would suggest you reach out to us at the NTCA. The reality is that the answer to you is, depending upon where you are in the country, yes, there's manufacturer training. Some of them are utilizing people like Adam and Chris to do their training. Some of them are hosting and bringing NTCA's trainers in to do those events. Are those proprietary manufacturer training? For the most part, no. It's for the most part they're sponsoring to grow the category and grow that market segment. And so, and if we aren't in your area, we could sure consider it, or we could talk to you about where that is to get your people to that area. I think this is a real opportunity for people around the country, and I don't often say this, but if you're a tile installation company and you don't embrace this category, I think you're making a mistake. That doesn't mean all of your crews have to be doing this work, but I think you should be looking at some of your crews being able to do this work.
Just to add to that, I've done both. I've brought the NTCA in to do a specific training for my crews, but I've also sent them to the material manufacturers, just because when you're using their products, you want to know exactly what the right products that you should be using, whether it's exterior, interior, and all those different things. So I think a mix of both is something that really should be done.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, on the fireplace return.
There wasn't a 90-degree angle. We still adhered to what we call radius equals thickness. So our radius in that corner in that 12 mm material was actually a 12 mm radius. And what we do is we'll back bevel and round over our inside pieces to maintain the integrity of that radius, so we don't have that stress point in that corner. So it really becomes a smoke and mirrors about how you're addressing your epoxy. And that's where the artist part comes into the installation.
I want to talk just a little bit to all of you, or maybe not Steve so much, on the investment side of this. Sam, I was able to visit you. You outgrew your fabrication shop, right? And so now you're investing into what? Grout engineered stone? Are you going to get into gauge porcelain panels? But you're growing that business. But that's a big decision for a family to make.
It's a big decision. We're going from 5,000 to about 28,000 square feet, but this is where we do see the market going. For fabrication of stone or whatever it may be. But anytime we get a porcelain job that's for a countertop, we are fabricating it in the shop, and it just kills our production, because it takes 4 or 5 times as long to cut it, and so it kind of affects everything. It kind of affects all that flow. So, we have recognized that, we do need a bigger space. We do need more machines that's going to help us with that problem. And, there's a market that we haven't even tapped. So this is a decision that we made, and we're very comfortable with it.
And Adam, you moved into from the trading side and contracting side, but you're also got a partner and you're in the distribution side. Is that correct?
Correct. As a contractor, my biggest qualms was logistics and some other things with traditional distribution when it comes to this product. that I made suggestions. No one wanted to hear it, so I said I'd do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at today. So servicing the contractor in my design community is where I feel my investment is biggest, because those are the people that need the biggest help.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So what do you do in the Kansas City area, and then maybe Chris in Omaha, as far as, are you bringing designers into your new, because that's a great way to educate, train, and get them. Yeah.
So with the design community, we're sponsoring events. We're part of all the different, the NKBA, the ASID. We're also ventured into our community college with the design programs, because they have a lot of opportunities to teach those new designers and architectural specifiers that are there that have no clue on this product. We work with our panel manufacturer to actually come in. They have a couple local reps here in the U.S., so if I need them to come in and do some CEUs for a large group of architects and designers, we can bring them in, rent a space out, and really train the group in a masses, because I think that's really where the success from the product will lay on.
Steve, you did a talk for us at Total Solutions Plus. I mean, you're one of the most knowledgeable people on porcelain tile panels that I've met. So we've brought you back 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
How does TVS, how do we get others to learn this category the way you've embraced this category?
Well, I think one of the best things to do is actually recognize projects that have showcase project achievements, get people to see the results.
Case studies.
Case studies, and actually visit a site, and see those solutions, because that's the aha moment of like what the brilliance and capacity of this material is. And internally, even the diversity in our own office, we have to constantly self-educate to raise that bar.
Yeah. So if there's yes, sir, go ahead.
The guys on the panel are using this 12mm material for countertops, and if so, what are they using as a substrate underneath it?
Yeah. Countertops. Adam, Chris?
Chris?
So for countertops, we do both 6 and 12, and we try to shy away from 6mm countertops, especially in kitchens. We're doing a lot of 6mm mainly in bathrooms for those
Like
tops.
vanities that matches for the
Correct.
floors and the showers. Yeah.
For that substrate, I will say there's a lot of great options out there. One thing that I will tell you to try and avoid at all costs is using plywood and an uncoupling membrane. We see that come up more often than you can imagine, and that's where the majority of those failures come from. Aside from probably some of the failures you may be seeing on the miter side, but for that substrate, there's a lot of really good options out there. Different foams, aluminum substrates. You can kind of delve into that a little bit, or we can talk afterwards. But.
Well, I might add that there are several manufacturers on the floor here today
Yeah.
that have 20mm through vein
It's a great point. Thanks for
porcelain, so that you could actually do a 3/4 inch top and dress the edge, and it's fantastic, and so the multiple manufacturers, and that's the next generation, and actually it's going to get thicker than that.
Yeah. And it was yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from NTCA's standpoint, we've got a schedule, and it's on our website, and you can find that schedule. We are doing, I think, about 80 regional events this year. Ours, like a full day exposure on this category, and then I would suggest if you look to some of the leading porcelain tile manufacturers domestically, a couple that come to mind, Milestone, Florum, Atlas Concord. See if they've got other Crossfill and others, if they've got other trainings on their schedule. But yeah, reach out to us, and we can depending upon the need of your guys, we can help connect you to locations for sure. Any other questions? I was just going to say, just the importance of training and certification, and we address that. This is not a category, in my opinion, that you can do without going through some kind of intensive training. And just feel strongly about that. So with that, I just want to thank you all. Hope you have a great day. If there's no other questions, give your panelists a hand. And have a great show, and go look at some of this material because it's incredible. So,
Again, yeah.
Same to you.
thank you.